Hunting or Bust, The Journey Onward by Master Atlan in Chapter 30, made it this far. Tenten stepped onto the makeshift mat and created three sticks with her semblance. She tossed one to her partner before holding two firmly and knocking them together. She gave him a quick nod and lowered into a small stance. Ready? Sasuke held the short weapon and nodded back. On your move. Tenten quickly stepped forward and jabbed one stick towards the swordsman's head as he moved out of the way. She chambered her outstretched arm and swung the other one across to catch the Uchiha's head, but he blocked it with his weapon. Metal collided and echoing in the small room. The two fighters exchanged strikes as Tenten struck with both sticks as Sasuke quickly blocked and guarded with his weapon. The raven-haired man ducked and stepped under Tenten's attacks as he stumbled to stay in the confines of the mat. He spun and smacked the stick strikes away before following up with attacks of his own. The partner kept throwing hits and attempting to trip the other up in an effort to win the mock match. Tenten blocked and swept towards the Uchiha's knee to stun him, but Sasuke jumped up and let the baton swing under him. He landed and quickly swept towards the bunny-haired girl's temple, but Tenten ducked before it could land. She swung for his legs. Sasuke lowered his stance and reached enough that he could still repel and defend against her attacks. The dull ring of metal hitting each other continued, and Tenten persisted to attack him from her position. She placed her foot forward and went to sweep out his feet, but Sasuke flipped over it and landed again. But his partner predicted this move, kicking her feet out and catching his leg quick enough to force him down on his knee. She pushed up to her feet and blocked the desperate reflex as he threw back to catch her, but then defended before locking his weapons together with hers. She swung the other baton down and down the length of his arm and stopped just short of hitting his neck, pinning his arm in place and catching the Uchiha before he could counter. Sasuke gave a small grumble with the blunt object pressed under his chin as Tenten smiled triumphantly. Yield! He gave no response but a furrow of his eyes at the predicament. Sorry, Sasuke, but I win, she bragged. Guess I'm just so awesome with my sticks now. Sasuke's other hand grabbed the wrist under his chin, and his outstretched arm jerked back and slammed into Tenten's chest, knocking her off balance as she was pinned back and partially off the blank mat. The stick user looked from side to side and the floor before up to her partner's stern expression. She frowned. I took too long, didn't I? Yes, you did. Sasuke released the pin as Tenten sighed and laid sprawled out on the floor. She pouted on the ground at her defeat before opening one eye and seeing that her partner was offering a hand to help her up. She smiled and accepted the help as she was hefted up on her feet in one quick move. Sasuke handed the single stick back to her and she immediately absorbed it back to her aura before it could disappear. Great job, Tenten! Naruto cheered as he congratulated his teammate, a big grin on his face. The blonde was sitting atop his naked bed with his legs folded over each other. Each of their beds were stripped of their comforts to create the makeshift fighting mat at the center of the room. The Whisker Teen grinned and bounced around with excitement. See, I told you this was going to be a great idea. I'm not arguing that this wasn't a good idea, Naruto. Tenten reiterated with a bashful look on her face. I was just surprised you guys would go this far to help me. Of course we would, Tenten. You wanted to train more, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Naruto looked between all of them. The three of us each use different fighting styles, so if we can hold off against us, that'll help you get used to fighting with your new weapons, and we can use our free time to help you train and practice when there's nothing else going on. But you don't have free. Because let's face it, if our friend is training to become stronger, then we need to do the same, and there's nothing more important than that. Naruto. So for the rest of the day, we'll be training off rounds and sparring against you. You still? No, I guess since you and Sasuke finished up, I'll take my turn. I'll just set the timer for like 30 minutes and... Naruto! The blonde flinched when he heard the strict tone in his friend's voice. As he looked up at the skull on Sasuke and Tenten's face, the brunette crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. How much more of your essay have you finished since we started? Naruto hesitated and was scared to look at his scroll screen, partly filled with text. He laughed nervously and shrugged. I'm taking a break. Sasuke furrowed his eyes. That's all you've been doing? I'm a slow writer. Tenten sighed and shook her head in disappointment. She looked towards the back of the room to see Kiba working on his bed too. Notebook opened in front of him as he tapped away on his device. She turned and glared pointedly at her leader. I told you this would just distract you when you should be writing. Tenten whispered. The whiskered teen lowered his head shamefully as Tenten looked down at the blanket mat. We shouldn't be doing this now. Let's pick the blankets up. No, let's keep doing your thing. Kiba spoke up and got their attention. Naruto was right about helping you train. You both finished your paper, so you might as well use your time doing something productive. Also, honestly, the sparring and promise that I'll get to fight some too is the only thing making me not slam my head into a wall right now. Tenten asked. And you sure it won't distract you from your work? I'm fine, Kiba grumbled with a scowl aiming at his scroll. Distracted or not, this stupid paper will come out sometime. So, tell me when it's my time to spar and I'm good. It's okay, Tenten. Naruto convinced her with a cheerful grin. You want to train, so we're gonna help you train. We can handle our work and still help you. End of discussion. The only female of Noctix looked at her team with gratitude and smiled. Thanks, guys. No problem. Now, time to switch things up. Naruto jumped out of the bed and stretched his arms. I'll take the next few rounds and you can get used to fighting people like me. Now, everyone step back. No, Sasuke interrupted. You need to keep writing. Sit. Naruto sat back down quickly. Kiba, you want a turn? Absolutely, the wild-looking teen said with a smirk as he tossed the scroll on the pillow and sprung up on his feet. Sasuke stepped back and Tenten gave a nervous laugh at the excited look on Kiba's face. You know, seeing you all amped up and ready to fight really makes me worried I made you mad or something. Not at all. I just really need to do something other than think and write. He held up his hands. Tonfa, please. Tenten focused on her semblance as a pair of metal tonfa formed along her arms. She tossed them over and Kiba quickly snatched them up before spinning them in his hands. He held his arms up to fight, and Tenten did the same with her sticks. Let's go. Kiba dashed forward and started exchanging blows as Tenten blocked them. Sasuke sat on his bed and watched his team spar in the center of the room before he looked over at Naruto. The leader was drumming on his knee and glaring down at his scroll with contempt. He spoke up over the sound of clashing metal. I thought you picked a subject you were good with. I did. I know about the Vital Festival and everything, but I just sucked putting it into words, and writing it on this stupid scroll only makes it harder. He scrunched up his face in annoyance before looking up at his friend. Why couldn't we just write these up again? Because we've seen yours and Kiba's handwriting, and this will be easier on Good Witch. Whatever, he responded indignantly and scowled. If you just let me train with Tenten, I bet that'll help me clear my mind. You'll get your turn, and all you're doing is using training as a method of procrastination. Naruto furrowed his eyes in argument, but the raven-haired teen kept his dull expression firm and merely shrugged. You still got work to do. Naruto clicked his teeth and went back to his scroll to work. Procrastinating. I'm bored and I can't work. What's wrong with that? Bet I'm not the only one. Hunting. Our armors like tenfold shields, our teeth shred like swords, our claws spears of agony, and shock of our tails come down like thunderbolts, our wings spread hurricanes, and our words are end. We are the fire, we are the... Blake! Damn, just at the good part, the black-haired girl looked up from her book to see a wave of golden hair hanging down from the bed over her. A pair of lilac eyes blinked down at her before the rest of Yang's face followed down. The buxom blonde had a disarming smile as she chuckled. Wow, that's a dirtier look than you usually give me when I interrupt. What was it? You in the middle of a particularly saucy scene? Blake rolled her eyes at the particular leer and raised the eyebrows accompanying Yang's statement. She shook her head. No, it's not that kind of story. Oh, then what kind of story is it? It's a story where humanity faces Grimm, but the Grimm are actually sentient enough that they can speak. Blake answered with interest at explaining the topic. It's actually quite amazing how they portray the Grimm with a perception. They explain their unyielding need to destroy things, and when they stand against the main character, there's such a fierce tension in the way they say. It devolves into a perception of evil and what separates us from. Oh wow! Yang droned with an exaggerated roll of her eyes. That is so interesting. You're not going on a grim bender because of your paper, are you? Blake's half-lidded eyes looked up at Yang with disdain at her mocking attitude before sighing in defeat. She gave up. Yang, what is it? You obviously didn't want to talk about my book, so what do you want? Well, Yang lowered her scroll into view and waved it over Blake's head. I was actually kind of wondering if you would check over my paper. I mean, I think it's totally perfect and amazing in every way, but you know, to the eyes of the beholder. She lowered it closer to Blake. So? Blake looked between the scroll and her partner several times before giving a small nod and closing a bookmark on the page. Yang grinned and jumped down from her bed before plopping down beside her partner. The stealthy girl gave her a strange look before submitting and letting Yang do what she wanted. She would have agreed with the point, which she would have argued with the point that she wanted some personal space, but With Yang, that's probably just fall on deaf ears. The amber eyes started dashing over the screen as she read through the paper with relative ease. It was good, nothing groundbreaking, but this was the school paper, not some dissertation. Not many errors, a few punctuation problems, and one or two run-ons, but it definitely held up. Blake looked over at her partner. You wrote about the Great War. Yang just shrugged casually. Seemed like a subject I could write a lot about at the time, and there was a ton of stuff written about it too. Of course, getting all the facts and actually putting them into words is a totally different thing. She noticed Blake had stopped reading it over and had instead started touching and dragging her fingers along the screen. What are you doing? Highlighting any mistakes I find. You can look over them and fix them however you want. She double-checked and nodded before handing it back over. Good work, Yang. That was a very nice essay. You did great. Aw. Yang cooed as she quickly grabbed her partner in a hug as the girl went rigid from the embrace. The blonde smiled and rubbed into the other girl. That's Blake. You're the best bestie a girl could ask for. Blake was uncomfortable with the familiar smothering tendency of her partner and started fidgeting in her arms. Her squirming started to weaken before she looked at Yang suspiciously and asked like she had misheard her. Bestie? Well, duh, of course you're my bestie. I see you every day and we hang out all the time. That pretty much fills all the criteria for making a best friend. Yang answered as she pulled back from the one-sided hug to grin. You're my partner, my better half, the chassis to my molder, the skull to my molder. I don't think I get that one. Is there a reference to something? I'm gonna make you put down that book and watch some TV one of these days. I'd rather you didn't, Blake flatly responded before asking with some interest. And have I done anything to exactly warrant a best friend status? Do you really need to deconstruct everything? Yang groaned reluctantly. Look, stuff like that just happens. You make friends, you click with some of them, and they become best friends. It just happens. Granted, it's pretty hard with you because you've got the social ability of a cardboard box, but you're still pretty cool. The hidden fondness frowned and glared at the boxer for the jab. Yang separated until she had one arm around Blake's thinner shoulder and joked, "Now, I get you probably think I'm annoying and don't share the feelings, but no worries. I'll persist and keep on trying until I force you to think of me the same way." Blake was not excited about that idea, but she felt like she had to point something out that Yang misunderstood. I don't think you're annoying, Yang, and I never meant to portray that feeling if that's what you thought. Blake looked Yang in the eyes and seemed timid to continue. I'm just not used to people being so forward and outgoing. I'm a little surprised by that to be honest, but I don't think you're annoying. Blake answered honestly while with shy looking in her eyes. You're my friend too. Yang had a warm smile that was immediately followed by a huge grin and a tight hug. Aw, Blakey, you're so sweet. I'm so glad you think of me like that. And she separated and gave the introverted girl a cheeky smirk. I guess now all I have to do to make you feel the same is pester, bother, and bug you for however long I need until I'm your bestie too. Blake paled. Please don't. Too late. Thwack. Son of a bitch, my hand. Sorry, Kiba. The girl spared a look at the wall behind them and the sudden exclamation that reared through it. Wonder what they're up to over there. Who knows? Blake looked back at the room and nudged Yang beside. But should we be more concerned about that? They looked over and saw Weiss sitting by the desk with her eyes closed and taking deep, calming breaths. The easy breathing method and peaceful position was totally contradicted by the barely contained scowl and twitching eyebrow on the Harris's face. Yang and Blake shared an uncertain look before the blonde asked, Yang and Weiss, you okay over there? Just fine. Why do you ask? Well, because you look like you swallowed a basket of lemons. Or you have a knife in your gut and you're trying to ignore it. Or you're trying to pass something really fierce. I'll have you both know that I am perfectly calm and composed at the moment. Weiss answered with all the refined finesse that she had developed from years of serious training from numerous professionals. She slightly shook her head and maintained the regal air. I'm not at all perturbed or riled. Weiss flinched at the soft giggling before taking a deep breath. With what is happening in my surroundings, the Harris's delicate eyebrow twitched furiously as she kept her cool. I am serene and controlled. I am unbound and not at all agitated. Weiss started grinding her teeth as a vein pulsed in her head with a thing that is totally and absolutely not my concern or problem at all. Weiss finally cracked and grabbed her head in anger before she started shaking and seething with rage, causing the two other girls to lean further back in Blake's bed for safety. The white-haired girl's shoulders raised up and down before she shuddered and looked back at them. 10 minutes! A 10-minute break. That was it. That was 40 minutes ago. 40 minutes of her doing that. Blake and Yang looked up to see Ruby lying on her bed with a big smile on her with a big smile and her headphones in as she watched her scroll. She had fits of giggles and laughs at the video she was watching. As Weiss stood up and marched over in front of their beds, she scowled and looked back at the other girls. She hasn't finished her paper yet, and she keeps putting it off to watch videos and goof around. She won't get anything done like this. Yang looked up at the shorter girl. Don't know what to tell you, Weiss. She just sort of likes to forget about things like this when they're so overbearing. If it helps, she usually pushes out a decent paper when she's at the 11th hour. That doesn't help, Yang. That doesn't help at all. Weiss looked back up at the top bed and furrowed her eyes before stepping on her own bed to lift herself up. She poked her head over to the side and got a better look to see Ruby watching some video about a game while she giggled, completely unaware of Weiss's scornful face right behind her. She waited for her to notice. Oh, this little... Ruby! She jumped in her spot and looked around in fright before she spotted Weiss's angry glare. Ruby slipped her headphones off and gulped in fear at the sight of her partner's ire. The young leader tried to diffuse the tension with a shaky smile and wave. Hi, Weiss. What's going on? Everything cool? No, it is not. Oh, that's a shame. The youngest huntress in training eyes darted down towards the scroll, and she immediately covered it up to save herself the incrimination. She gave a coarse laugh and pulled it back to her as she shrunk under the icy blue eyes, glaring daggers into her skin. Well, I was just in the middle of looking up information about the schools. Yeah, working really hard on my research, she unconvincingly said to ease her partner's rage to no avail. Well, I guess I'll get back to work. Ruby, I know all you've been doing is watching videos. Weiss bluntly cut off as her eyes narrowed at the hoodie-wearing girl. She snatched the scroll out of her hands and turned the screen back on with a scowl. Peeved players? Yeah, they released some new videos today, and I just wanted to check them out. Weiss just looked up at her questioningly, and Ruby realized she didn't know what she was talking about. She turned in her bed to face Weiss directly. Oh, come on, you never heard about peeved players? You know, hey, I'm mad. Actually, I'm pretty well adjusted, and we're the peeved players, yay! Weiss just kept staring at her with blank confusion in her eyes. Ruby humped before touching the screen and holding it out for Weiss to see. Here, watch this. Oh ho, looks like we've got a bit of a vacuum standoff going on right here. Mind game, man. Nothing but mind games. I'm just waiting for you to screw up. Oh, really? Yeah, man, I can stand here and do nothing all day. Watch as I meander and do nothing. Oh, no, wait. Yes. No. I win. I see that. Ruby peeked over the screen and saw Weiss's complete disinterest in the comedy in front of her, even as Yang laughed behind them. She pouted before an idea popped into her head, and she changed the video. She held it back out to her partner. Okay, Weiss, watch this. I'm done. Just done. Screw the plants, all the plants. I'm gonna make it my goal in life to cut down all plants and green and forest. And you done? Yes, I'm done. Come on, man. One more time. One more try. You can do it. You think? I know so. All right. I'll give it one more try before I hit end. I hit end. No. Oh my God. Weiss listened to the freak out and screaming on the screen. It couldn't help the giggle that escaped her lips. Ruby's eyes glimmered with hope at finally getting her partner to laugh and enjoy something she enjoyed. See, Weiss, I knew you liked it. It's funny, right? It's actually quite amusing. Can I see it real quick? Ruby complied and handed her scroll over in the hopes that she could get the white-haired girl interested in the same thing she'd liked. Weiss looked over the scroll and seemed interested by the selection of videos, but then immediately grabbed Ruby's ear and gave it a small squeeze, eliciting a quick yelp from the young girl. Ruby whimpered and opened her eyes to see the stern, unwavering look on Weiss's face. The hair muttered, "You've been on a break for long enough. If you want help, then I'm willing to assist you, but you need to get back to work, okay?" Ruby's cheeks puffed up and she seemed like she wanted to say something before the words died, and she nodded in agreement. The Schnee released her hold on the ear and the leader of Ruby gently rubbed it to alleviate the sting. Ruby hung her legs off the side before jumping down to join the hares, looking miserable and sad the whole time as she was led towards the desk like she was on death row. She sat down and hung her head sadly as White stood over her like a vigilant hawk. "There's a typo there, by the way." Ruby started getting back to work and realized Weiss was making no effort to step back. She asked with a genuine confusion, "I thought you were going to help because this wasn't your problem." It's not. The girl crossed her arms and huffed irritably at the unfortunate truth. Sadly, you are my problem, and I need to make sure you get this done, so hop to it. Why, so you don't stop complaining and get back to work, you dingus? Yes, ma'am. Blake and Yang just stared at the strange scene in wonder and watched Weiss ruthlessly berate Ruby. Yang watched her sister talk and bond with her partner, no matter how much either of them denied the arguing as anything but them getting along. But as the older sister watched her little sister get along with the Harris, she felt a tinge of something growing in her belly. Envy, jealousy, the feeling like someone was replacing her spot by her baby sister's side. It was probably all of those, but one feeling still trumpeted all of that uncertainty she was expressing. She was happy her antisocial, nerdy little sister had finally gotten the Harris to warm up to her. Yang smiled and hid a chuckle before nudging Blake's shoulder. At least we aren't best friends like them, right? We are not best friends. This is your opinion and no one else's. What? Weiss, you're not my friend? Don't you start. Blitz's shoulders slumped, but she gave a light laugh at the antics of her team. She had never been used to people acting like this around her or interacting with her like this, and it was still very foreign and different to her, but she was looking forward to the day that was no longer the case. Hunting. Tenten shuffled on her feet and gripped her sticks tighter as a low growl came out. She furrowed her eyes at the cocky smile the whiskered blonde was sporting as he bounced on his feet and easily spun the short stick around his hand. He smirked as he got into a ready stance and held the short stick close to prepare for her attack. Tenten was afraid of this. She had always thought Naruto was surprisingly agile and quick to avoid so many attacks so quickly in fights, but now she knew for certain that her leader was just downright slippery. Naruto stopped shifting in place and jerked forward, making Tenten flinch and raise her sticks up in defense as Naruto jabbed and slammed his weapon against her hand. She yelped and shook her hand to get the feeling back as she used her other hand to swing and thrust the blonde's head. But the teen leaned and ducked beneath the swipes to completely avoid them before stepping in for his own. Tenten's stick strikes blocked and parried the blonde's jabs. She swung out to catch his head, but the blonde moved underneath it and stepped forward to get inside Tenten's guard. She quickly stepped to the side and gained the distance again before rapidly swinging and chamber her stick for extra strength. Naruto knocked them aside as fast as they came before grabbing her outstretched arm and pulling her in. He swung down on her head. Dong! Metal smacked against metal and the stick violently reverberated in his hand. Tenten's forehead was covered in metal, and she smirked in return at his surprise. That was the whole point of these exercises, to adapt new tactics and ways to fight different opponents. She didn't have to stick just with her weapons. She lunged forward and knocked her head into Naruto's chin as he grunted and stumbled back. She pulled her arm out of his grip and swung up at his head, but hit only air as he ducked again. Before he could land, the blonde barreled into her chest and kicked up one of her feet as she had lost balance. She nearly fell over on him as he shifted her weight and threw her over his shoulder. She landed on her back and Naruto came down to land on the last strike. Donk! Naruto stopped mid-swing when he felt the light tap on the crown of his head. He stayed frozen over the downed girl and looked at where she had tapped his head from her position on the floor. Tenten was panting lightly and catching her breath before a shaky smile came over her face. I didn't take long this time. Naruto gave a small chuckle and nodded. Way to go, Tenten. He laughed again and his opponent joined in before he flinched and rubbed his chin gingerly. Ow. Oh, sorry. Tenten apologized as she sat back up and looked over her friend in worry that she might have hurt him worse than expected. I'm sorry, Naruto. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, he said with a cheerful smile. Barely stung at all. Really? Nope, but I didn't want to worry you. She was so caught up in the fighting and training that she forgot that Naruto's semblance and aura were kind of weird. His aura healed damage instead of protecting him like armor, which explained why he always dodged and moved in fights, and his healing worked a lot faster on his injuries than any of theirs did, which she kind of envied. But she did not envy how careful he had to be and how he had to take a full blunt of the injuries like he did. That was a constant worry of hers, and the team, when she saw him spar or fight, they knew how strong and resilient he was, but one wrong move, and it was not a pleasant thought. She asked with a lot of care in her voice, do you want to stop? No, I'm fine. He tapped his chin for emphasis that it was no longer a problem. See, all healed. I'm fine. Tenten didn't look convinced before Sasuke spoke up from his bed. He'll be alright, Tenten, don't worry. The brunette looked reluctant to agree, and the swordsman just shrugged. Why don't you take a break? You've been sparring longer than any of us. Tenten gave a small nod and took her weapons back into her aura as she stepped over to rest on her bed. Naruto scowled over at his friend. You can take a breather and Naruto can get some work done on this essay. The blonde scoffed. No need, I'm almost finished. One more paragraph and I'm cleared. Told you I had it under control. A cocky sneer formed on his whiskered face as he looked over at his frustrated partner. Unlike someone else. Shut up. Naruto chided his partner. Come on, Kiba. I thought you had this all figured out. In the bag. Easy money. I said shut up. You know, I said the whole I'm becoming smarter than you thing was a joke and to get under your skin, but at this rate, it's gonna be true. Naruto's teeth showed in his bold, mocking grin. How's it gonna feel knowing you're dumber than me? Kiba looked up and glared at Naruto viciously, holding himself back from a roar and pounced that would end with the blonde screaming on the floor with a fist in his mouth. But the Nuzaka took a deep breath to calm his wrath and focused back on the task at hand. Plus, it was exactly what Naruto wanted. He wanted to know he was getting under his skin. If he threw a punch, the blonde won. And now he look at him with that smug, punch-hungry face. He was begging for a knuckle to the tooth. The tooth sighed and ran his hand over his head tiredly. He relented and just stared at his scroll in defeat. I'm blanking. I can't go anymore. Naruto chuckled before asking, What are you writing about anyway? Faunus? He nodded as Tenten asked from her bed. What are you blanking on? Just trying to think about a few things regarding their traits and characteristics, like how their physical features show up and how they can or don't differ by generation. Kiba scratched his head in confusion and asked, Have you guys ever met a reptilian or amphibious faunus? Because I don't think I've met someone like that before. I think I've met someone like that before. Not me. A few, actually. Kiba shrugged and chalked it up to different locations and areas they lived in. He leaned back against the wall by his bed and thought out loud, Does night vision have disadvantages? His team looked at him oddly and he just shrugged. What? I'm just wondering, like if it hurts if the lights keep switching and if it takes a moment to adjust. His shoulders slumped and he looked down at his scroll. Naruto, what do you think? About what? The night vision thing. Does that happen or not? Naruto raised his brow. Why are you asking me? Well, I'm asking a faunus. A question on a faunus can answer, dumbass. Now, are you gonna help or just keep being a jerk the whole time? Because if you are, I'm gonna look it up on the net. Naruto, Sasuke, and Tenten all looked over at Kiba with varying expressions of shock and surprise. The blonde stared at his partner in utter disbelief at what he just said in passing. He turned around and spoke with a shaky tone. What did you just say? I said, are you going to be a jerk or help me? No, before that. Night vision, do your eyes adjust fast enough or no? Naruto grabbed Kiba's shoulder and forced the tattooed boy to look him in the eye as he asked with urgency, Kiba, you said I was a faunus? How did you know? Kiba seemed confused by his question. No, what? That I was a faunus? Naruto answered more pointedly before shaking his head and pointing at his striped banana. Did you see under this? Did you see them? Kiba just tilted his head. Were you hiding them? Naruto just stared at the brown-haired boy in complete disbelief. He released his grip on Kiba's shoulders and stepped back as his foot scrunched up the blanket mat behind him. He ran his hand down his face before looking back at Sasuke for an answer. The black-haired teen was just as blindsided by this revelation as he was. Sasuke looked over at Kiba and tried to get the situation under control. Kiba, when did you figure out Naruto was a faunus? When did you know? When did I know? And Kiba repeated as he looked up in deep thought. The day we met in the forest. The first day? He saw through him the first day they met. Naruto barely contained his shock and mumbled into his hands. Sasuke felt his curiosity peak as he asked again, But how could you tell? Kiba just gave an uncommitted shrug and an ambiguous hum. I just knew. The others looked at him strangely before he snapped his fingers. But I was using my semblance when me and him first met. Now that I think about it, it's probably how I knew. Humans, animals, and faunas all give off different scents and different presences. I can tell better with Pharaoh, so I just knew. The whiskered blonde grumbled into his hands before just looking at Kiba in a mix of defeat, worry, confusion, dread, and resignation. He shook his head. Why? He asked. If you knew all this time, then why didn't you say anything? Kiba looked between them like he was waiting for them to continue talking. When they didn't, he just scratched his head. Why would I? Faunus, human, who gives a shit? It's all the same in my book. Kiba then furrowed his brow at the blonde. Wait, so you were trying to hide it? Yeah, Naruto answered with a grumble. Thought it was a pretty good one too, but apparently not good enough for. He motioned to Kiba's entire form. Whatever you do. Huh? Kiba leaned on his elbows and smiled smugly. Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I know no. The blonde lunged forward and covered Kiba's mouth before he could finish talking. The leader looked at his partner and shook his head. No, Kiba, I'm one thing, but you have to promise that you tell absolutely no one about her. That is not our secret to divulge. Promise me you'll be quiet. Kiba couldn't respond with his mouth being muffled, but he did answer with a firm nod. The blonde pulled back as the two conveyed their promise of silence before Naruto gained a worried look. Sasuke already knew, Kiba knew apparently, but now he turned around and looked at Tenten as she had remained stunned silent through this whole epiphany. Naruto lowered his head in guilt and scratched his neck before facing her directly. Tenten, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I never told you or Kiba about me, the real me, he said with a point towards his head. I was going to tell you one day, I swear. Tenten was just staring up at him in silence. He struggled to find the words. It's just, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's been easier to keep it hidden than to reveal it. I didn't mean to make you think I don't trust you both. I hope you can understand. She didn't say anything. Tenten, can you say anything? Anything? Tenten's eyes shifted to the side for a moment, and she waited before a nervous smile slipped out. She looked like she got caught with her hands in the cookie jar. I figured it out before today. What? Yeah, she scratched the back of her head. Do you remember a few weeks back when I woke up for class and patted your head? He shook his head. No, not at all. Well, you were really sleepy and out of it. It was when you and Sasuke were staking out Wilkes and getting home. Doesn't matter. Tenten looked up at him. I patted your head and I swore I felt lumps under your nightcap. I then started thinking about it and noticed other little behaviors you had, and she shrugged. Took a guess. Sasuke blinked in surprise. Kiba nodded with pride at his friend's deduction. Naruto. Oh, Naruto moaned as he lumbered out over to his bed and fell straight onto the mattress. He muffled into a pillow. Why? Great disguise this was. The others watched Naruto scream and mope in his bed before Kiba looked over at Sasuke for confirmation. You gonna be okay? Sasuke sighed. I'm not sure. We were not expecting this to happen. He looked over at Tenten. But why didn't you say anything? The bunny-haired girl seemed to struggle with a proper answer much more than Kiba did. She slumped her shoulders. Because if you didn't tell us then, maybe there was a reason. I didn't want to press him for it. And well, Kiba's right. It doesn't matter. Tenten sat up in the bed and spoke out to her leader. Naruto, can we see them? Meh, why not? They already knew. The limp hand dropped on the back of his head and fiddled with the knot. He undid the bandana and let it slip off before sitting up and turning back towards his teammate. Their eyes were immediately drawn to the yellow ears that twitched and shook a little after being freed from their confines. Tenten smiled. They're cute. A light pink hue formed on Naruto's face at the unexpected compliment as his ears lowered on his head. Don't tease. They're just ears, Kiba stated. Now back on the matter of night vision. Hey! And Tenten sat up with cheer and grinned towards her leader. Now that we know, are you gonna stop wearing the bananas? Or you can take it off when it's just us in the room if you want? Naruto remained silent as he grabbed the cloth and quickly wrapped it back over his head as his ears disappeared. Kiba and Tenten just looked at him in confusion as he shook his head. No, I'll keep it on. But guys, the two looked towards Sasuke as he had a firm look on his face and shook his head. He just wants to keep it on. Leave it at that. Tenten looked dejected at the thought that Naruto would prefer keeping this hidden still despite the knowledge, and for some reason Sasuke agreed with that choice. For whatever reason, the look in their eyes and the tone in their voice was so much different from the usual boys thing she knew, but she felt and knew that forcing the issue would probably only lead to an argument or worse. Okay, she and Naruto met eyes and smiled. Thank you for showing us. Naruto smiled with gratitude for understanding. Yes, wonderful. Everyone is happy. Kiba cheered sarcastically. But seriously, Night Vision, answer the question, Naruto. I need to finish this stupid paper already. Hunting? John, are you okay? The scraggly blonde teen looked up from his stagnant paper towards the concerned expression on Pyrrha's face. He nodded and tried to ease her worry, if only slightly. Yeah, I'm good. Kinda drawing a blank on what to do for the last two paragraphs, but I'm fine. You are? The champion inquired as she slid her chair closer to his side and leaned over to get a better look at his paper. He noticed what she was doing and hoping that she might be able to suggest something to get the brain going again, pushed it over for her to see better. She skimmed over it and asked, "How are you thinking of ending it?" "Don't know." John went over to the previous paragraph. "I spent some time comparing the kingdom's policies and stuff so that I'd write about how they're different now." He then pointed to the other end of the table. "At least that's what Ren suggested. Essays on comparing and contrasting aspects can fill up dozens of pages with the proper information," Ren stated as he turned the page of his book. "I thought John would have an easier time writing like that, considering it was about the councils and governments." "Yeah, but I'm from Vale, so I only really know what Vale's rules are like." John gave a small shrug. "Actually, that's a total lie. I had no idea what Vale's council does, so I looked it up on the web." "That's understandable. Politics is a heavy subject to try and approach with limited knowledge." Pierre agreed with his statement. Trying to compare the contrast policy of different kingdoms sounds like a frightening subject to come into blind. Perhaps John just wanted to test himself and expand his knowledge of different parts of Remnant, or more likely, he probably had to choose from the leftover topics. She sat up and looked at him with an answer. "I can help you if you want. I'm from Mistral, and even if I don't have a deep knowledge about the process there, I can still help you however I can." A glimmer of hope seemed to fill the dark tunnel that was his mind before a tinge of guilt took it over. He looked around the library and saw the orange tint that had settled over the entire room as the sun began to set. They had come in here to put the finishing touches on their essays at noon, and now he was the only one sitting working on it even now. He looked troubled and turned to his kind partner. "Thanks, Spiro, but I've already made you and the others stick around long enough." She shook her head. "Nonsense. You're my partner, and if you need help, then I'll be here to help. Also, Ren seems perfectly content." The quietest member of the team sent a small wave to indicate he was fine reading a little longer. "And Nora." Ugh. The usual excitable girl rested her head on the table and let out a guttural groan at the lack of stimuli she was suffering from. John and Pyrrha stared at her for a bit before the redhead gave him a nervous smile. "She's resting." "I'm bored," the short but strong girl corrected. Pyrrha's mouth shut as her effort to prove to John they were fine with waiting was being rendered mute by the bored Ginger. "I don't want to be bored anymore," she droned before enthusiastically pointed at John with a grin. "John?" He sat up on his seat. "Yeah, quickly, write the rest of the paper up in an instant," she announced with gleeful expectation from the blonde. "Gain the speed of lightning and complete your assignment in a flash. Now!" The others looked between each other to see if anything happened as Nora just stayed frozen. Their eyes darted around before repeating, "Now!" "Nora?" The hammer wielder fell back in her seat with a grummy pout. "Pooh! I thought that would work." She immediately started to shrink back at the accusing look she was getting from both Pyrrha and Ren. The redhead was the first to reprimand her. "Nora, you shouldn't pressure someone into finishing their work like that. John can take his time and finish it like he wants." "Oh yeah, he can totally do that," Nora agreed before tapping her fingers on the table. "I just like it if he did it faster. I'm hungry." Ren rubbed the bridge of his nose and calmly spoke up to his older friend. "Nora, you only just finished writing your paper a few minutes ago. It's a bit hypocritical to demand John to finish it so soon when you had the same problem." "Yeah, but that was the me then, and this is the me now. And now me is starving." Nora slumped over again with bags under her eyes. "Food! Necessity!" The others looked at each other in exasperation as they tried to figure out a way to keep Nora occupied before they went to eat. Ren came up with an idea. "Nora, we're all a little bored actually. Why don't we do something to pass the time?" He looked around the library with this for suitable distraction. "I think I saw a book of fairy tales and stories over there. How about that?" "Oh!" Nora jumped up to her feet with a huge smile on her face. "Good idea, Ren. Story time. Be right back." The short girl dashed away in a flash and left a massive gust of wind in her wake that billowed across her friends and nearly blew away John's papers. The blonde and redhead looked at the boy with the pink highlight as Ren gave a small nod. "She's a surprisingly good storyteller. It might do us all some good to take a break." Nora dashed in again with a massive leather-bound book in her arms that nearly broke the table when she dropped it down. She took a seat beside Ren and John and started flipping the pages of the massive book to find one she particularly loved. John leaned over to peek at the book she was shuffling through and saw the stories getting passed over. "Wow, that's a whole lot of stories." That's an edition of the book that holds accounts of the oldest fairy tales and stories passed on from our ancestors, the redhead stated as she recognized the book as the same one she found in the library back in Mistral. She fondly remembered the nostalgic expression of looking between the book before the librarian would come tell her to leave it alone. It was written by the people with the best recollection of the stories immediately after the Great War had finished. Once some of the older books and pieces of art were destroyed, they had to write them down again before they were forgotten. These are basically the originals for all the modern day stories we remember. John hummed in excitement as he read some titles that Nora flipped through. Shallow Sea, The Brothers' War, Story of the Seasons, The Faunus Noble Guards. Never heard that one before. You probably have. Have you read The Majesty's Menagerie? John nodded to Ren's question as the boy shrugged. It's the same story, but with slight changes. They took the original Noble Guard story and represented it during the Faunus Revolution to better publicize human relations with Faunus. It made them seem better while changing a heroic tale of Faunus into one where the heroes are cruel kings and queens abusing their followers. It also made humans look a lot better by playing them out as heroes and liberating the Faunus to move to Madry. John actually reeled back inside from the dark truth behind an old fairy tale he read with his family years ago. He felt his chest go cold a little and looked over at Piero for confirmation. The redhead had a sad look in her eyes and she shook her head. We weren't in the best of places all those years ago. It was a bad time. Ah! Nora cried a cry of irritation garnered her friend's attention again as she grumbled. I can't find the scary stories. They got all these fairy tales, but they don't have School of the Undead. That sucks. Really? Pierre questioned before giving a small nod. Well, it makes sense. These books detail the stories from before the war. The schools were only set up after it happened. They shouldn't be in here. Ren nodded. She's right, Nora. You won't find a story on Elysium in that book. Nora looked ready to yell. Wait, hold on. John spoke up and looked between them. What's the School of the Undead? What's Elysium? What? The ginger girl jumped over her seat and stood over John with anticipation. You've never heard of Elysium, the School of the Undead? No. Scary story time, she cheered. He needs to hear this. We need darkness and a scary source of light. Nor, it's the afternoon. It's not dark enough. The ball of perpetual energy that was Nora dashed over and returned with a black sheet in hand. Ta-da! Did you just rip that off the drapes? Shh! Nora silenced her friend before he could incriminate her. Ren, you're spoiling the mood. She threw the tarp over them, and Team Juniper found themselves in a void of darkness. Nora slipped under the tarp as well and turned her scroll on under her chin to cast her in a scary light. She crawled evilly and spoke in a particularly husky voice. Well, children, are you ready for a tale that will scare you to your very core? John, okay. Pyrrha, I suppose. Ren, aren't we in a library? Years ago, when the hunting schools were being made, they also built graveyards and cemeteries for the people that died during the war not too far away. The new students would go into the school during the day and pay respect for the heroes that died at night. And this went on for many, many years. But then one day, people swore they could hear voices coming from the cemetery, wails and cries from the casualties of war that which they could have trained and learned to fight before they died. The ghost wails got louder and louder every day until they stopped. John gulped. They did. People wondered why the voices stopped. They visited the cemeteries and tried to find the cause of the noise, but found every single grave had been emptied. Nora went silent and looked between her teammates, each of them looking towards her intently as she had gripped their attention. The people were baffled. The bodies were nowhere to be found until they heard noises from the combat schools at night. No. Oh, yes. People took up arms and marched into the combat schools, and in the darkness there was the wafting scent of decaying flesh and dirt in the air. They traveled further in and finally found them, the bodies of the dead that had lost their lives in the war, but they were armed and standing and swinging their weapons around like they were alive again. The dead had come back to life to learn to truly fight so they wouldn't die again, but when they noticed the living people that had snuck up on them, that had been their sacrifice that took their sacrifice for granted, there was no mercy. They pounced, ripped off flesh and tearing things apart. The sounds of organs and blood were like and then they were like, stop. And John pulled out the tarp and held his beating chest as he shook the vivid imagery out of his head. The other members of his team slipped out with varying degrees of amusement at his reaction. He shivered a little and tried to get the color back in his cheeks. I do not like horror stories. or movies or any stuff with organs and blood and oh god. But it was a good story, right? Nora begged with a big smile on her face while she bounced in her seat. I love that story so much. It was so creepy and cool. I should keep telling you guys all the creepy, scary stories I know, and we can do them at night in the room so they're even creepier. John let out a fragile whine. Aspira couldn't contain her laughter anymore. She giggled into her hand and looked at the orange-haired girl. I'm not quite sure that's the best idea, Nora. I don't think John could handle them. But they're so good. Nora pointed to her partner with a grin. And we can do it while Ren makes pancakes for dinner. We used to do that all the time. It's the best. Pyrrha and John spared the green-clad boy a look, and Ren gave a non-committal shrug. It doesn't sound like it, but they can be quite delicious as a late night treat. The Juniper crew smiled at the thought before they turned towards their leader for to say. The blonde felt very conscious of their looks and scratched his cheek with a smile. Well, I guess that's something we can do in the future, but they better be great pancakes and stories that won't leave me trembling in bed. Do the best, and you'll totally have nightmares. That's a Nora guarantee. That totally defeated the purpose. But Lord, her enthusiasm was infectious. Hunting. Done! Kiba roared as he tossed his scroll over his bed. Finally! A wave of applause was accompanied with his friends' cheers as he bowed. Thank you, thank you. I can't say it was nothing because it wasn't. That was a pain in the ass. Congrats, Kiba. You did it. And with time to spare. Nora gave a louder applause and a teasing grin aimed at his partner. Way to go. We were wondering what was taking you so long. Kiba groaned. All right, that's enough with the jokes. I'm done and that's that, he demanded before he fell back into his bed with a loud yawn. This day can finally end. He may be exaggerating, but today was definitely been eventful. They finished their essays, having got a ton of training in with each of them, and most importantly, surprisingly, Naruto's secret had been revealed without him even saying anything. Yeah, long day. Naruto finished with his jokes and pointed out to Kiba, I think it took you so long because you were trying to put all those facts you got from those books into. And he smiled. You should have just got it all from the internet like I did. Surprise spread between the other members of Noctix as they looked towards Naruto. But you did use the book, right? He shook his head. No, I got all the facts I needed from the web like I said. He noticed the unamused groan and palming the faces between his teammates, and he didn't know why. What is it? You were supposed to have at least one book source for your paper. You're lying. He's not. We each need at least one book. You're lying. You're all lying. He looked between them with fear in his eyes. You're getting back at me for something, right? It's the truth. Notice I seem to constrict in horror before they return to normal. Fine, if you guys want to play me that school, I'll just ask Ruby and she'll tell the truth. He started typing away on his scroll before sending the message. There, now we wait and see. No! You adults! The screaming from the other side of the wall was drowned out by the subsonic burst that immediately followed. Naruto considered confidence started to die as his jaw hung agape. And you're worried I'm becoming an idiot? Kiba spat out before pointing at the door. Library's still open for 30 minutes. You might want to get running, champ. Wait for me, Ruby! Hunting. John sat alone at the table as he tapped his pencil against the wood. He was the only member of Team Juniper still waiting around the library as he sent his friends off to get some dinner ahead of him and call it a day. He went to check over the stuff he had written one last time before he called it quits. Ren and Pyrrha were reluctant to leave but honored his decision. Nora was all too ready to dash out of the dreary library and get some nourishment. She was bored again after the library confiscated the storybook and drapes at the request of all the other people studying at the time. Apparently, they were causing a ruckus and needed to quiet down. Made sense considering he pretty much yelled for Nora to stop telling that creepy story about zombies and mutation and... Oh jeez. He covered his face again at the uneasy feeling and gargled his stomach gape. Bad thoughts. He swallowed the nasty taste and went back to focusing on his work. It was late now, and he just wanted to finish like others. He completed the paper, but with his lack of knowledge concerning the kingdoms, he was second-guessing everything he had written down. Why couldn't he just be satisfied with what he had put down like the others were? Why... A book! John startled out of his thoughts as Ruby terrifiedly shrieked and pierced the silence as she came running in with a trail of rose petals. The red-haired girl started dashing and peering between the rows of books. Where is it? Where is it? There has to be one. Oh, Weiss is gonna kill me. Move! Naruto came rushing in and tossed Ruby aside as he too started combing over the row of books. About the festival, five festival. Where's the damn book about the festival? Don't shove! The blonde let out a pained gasp as he was knocked back when Ruby came barreling into his side. I was here first. There's enough space. I need this more. That's where you're wrong. The blonde boy and dark-haired girl disappeared in blurs around the shelves. John watched them like this for a moment before they both came over to his table and slammed the books on the tabletop. We did it! Yes! The two leaders cheered with grins. They remained silent for a moment before they looked towards John as he watched them in silence. He waved him. Hey Naruto, hey Ruby, you guys working on your papers today? Hey John, Ruby greeted as she sat down on one of the tables. You've been working hard too? Pretty much. Yeah, Naruto sat and hurriedly shook his head. This paper was a lot harder than I thought it would be. John nodded. Yeah, but it probably didn't help that we only remembered we had them yesterday. Oh yeah, Ruby agreed. Well, that too. Naruto said through a yawn. He tapped the book in front of him. This bookstore's thing totally sucks. I know. The others were so angry with me when I forgot about getting a book. Ruby sadly mumbled as she shuffled in her seat at the thought. She looked over at the armor-clad blonde. Did you remember that about the thing about a book, John? He hummed. Yeah, Pyrrha and Ren reminded me before I forgot. Man, having nice people on your team must be nice, Naruto muttered with some disdain. His friends didn't remind him about the bookstores before it was too late. All they did was worry about him, constantly make sure he was on top of this assignment, and accept him for what he was, while also prompting to keep his secret. But besides that, Kiba had a stupid face. Hey, my team's nice too, Ruby defended. Weiss is always watching out for me. I mean, she's usually angry when she does, but it's the thought that counts. And Blake helps me out when I really need to study. Plus, Yang is Yang, so she always has my back. They just sort of forgot, and I forgot about the book. So, yeah. The boys laughed a little at Ruby's weak defense before even the hooded girl got a laugh out of it. The group of leaders quieted down a little and sat around in incompatible silence. Did you guys think it would happen when we first came here? They looked towards John after he had asked the strange question. What do you mean? I mean, did you guys ever think we would come this far? John asked again with more violence as he looked more volume as he looked towards them. On the first day I met you guys, I never thought I would be accepted here, or at least I'd become the leader of a team. Ruby and Nora looked between each other before small smiles formed on their features. They remembered their first day too. Three weirdos meeting together after getting lost around the campus and in desperate need of some friends. John just finished emptying out his stomach contents on Yang's boots and into a trash can. Naruto had pulled out of his life of crime and wandering around blind after Sasuke had run off. And Ruby had just been accepted to begin years ahead of schedule, making a great first impression with her future partner via an explosive sternunation. God, that was only a few months ago, but it felt like a lifetime. Naruto grinned and looked towards the girl across from him. You remember how frightened you were about coming to the school? You were nobody would like you. But now, Ruby giggled a little and shuffled in her seat bashfully. I love being at this school. I'm really glad I came. Yeah, me too, Naruto said, returned with a smile directly at his two friends. I'm glad I came here and met all of you, and thank you too for becoming my friends. John and Ruby both blushed slightly at his thanks as they laughed and returned his smile. Ruby picked up her book and held it close before stepping out from the table. The others are probably going to be worried if I take too long. Bye, Naruto. Bye, John. See you guys tomorrow. The hooded girl walked off, and Naruto tapped his big book as well. I need to check this out before the place closes off rentals. He stood up and kept the book under his armpits before saluting to the other blonde. Don't work too hard, John. See you later. Bye. The Arc Boy waved his friends goodbye before he disappeared down the corner, and his footsteps soon after. The Juniper leader sat in silence and looked down at his paper again as he realized what was plaguing him. Why was the rest of his team could so easily finish their work, and he was left an uncertain mess? Because they knew what they were doing, what they were after. He remembered coming to Beacon on the first day and meeting Naruto and Ruby. He connected and empathized with them so easily because they all had things in common. They were all unsure and hesitant to see what could go wrong while they were at Beacon, and for the longest time, it seemed like that was a factor they were all going to share. But Ruby had become so confident and eager, where she was frightened about how she wouldn't be accepted here at school. She had a team that would follow her anywhere. She had gained the respect of Weiss and was prepared for anything the future might hold. And Doctor had been taken off the street while he was a thief. As weird as that thought was, John felt a stronger connection with him because of that. They were both people that had found themselves in unfamiliar places and felt like they didn't belong. But Doctor had remained brave and strong. He had rallied him and their friends to face a great evil, and they came out victorious. And even though they didn't plan on it, the world had become a better place because of it. Now the other blonde was happily meeting every day with the same courage and readiness, and he was a leader now, leader of Team Juniper. He was in charge of some amazing and incredible individuals. Ren was composed and intelligent and peaceful and serene. Nora was bursting forth with energy and joy and strength. And Pierre was kind and compassionate and perfect in the human form. He was in charge of all their future together. They wanted to fight and prove themselves in that tournament to the world. They had such hopes for what their teams could do, but as long as they had him, as long as he was holding everyone back. John gave a heavy sigh, slid his paper out of his side, and rested his face in his palms. He shook his head with such derision, feeling a heavy weight of guilt settle on him, and almost wanted to cry. His eyes came out sad and lonely as he spoke up to no one. What am I going to do? End of chapter 30.